wasn't that just good? Like, I'm not going to even speak the proper English. I'm just going to say that was just good. Yep, I'm from Hope, Arkansas. So forgive me, I missed Dr. Ware. And so we're going to pause 1 second, Dr. Jesse, and we're going to allow Dr. Ware to speak briefly, and then I will move forward and then get to Dr. Hargrove. Is that okay? So can you clap your hands for Dr. David Ware, please?
Madam Chair, I heard the important word there, speak briefly.
No.
Okay, no.
Speak as long as you want to.
Oh, no.
I'm gonna step back here.
I know better. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to see a crowd has came out in spite of the fact that we seem to have had the monsoons hit a little early. My name is David Ware. I'm director of the State Archives. My job title says State Historian. However, my other job title says Secretary of the Black History Commission of Arkansas. And I have a great deal of pride in telling people that I have that post. I'd like to express my thanks to Tiana, who put this great program together, and my colleagues on the State Archives staff who are out here. Between this and the fact that our research room is open, I believe we have all but one of our research room archivists working either up at the shop or down here today on a rainy Saturday. It's amazing. The symposium theme is cultural significance of buildings in the community. This puts me in mind of a t-shirt and a slogan that's been used by Preserve Arkansas, the statewide Historic Preservation Alliance. For many years, they have this wonderful t-shirt that has the outline of Arkansas that says, "This place matters." It could say just as well, "These places matter," because they're all about historic preservation, large scale and small. Why do historic places matter? Let me suggest there are three big groups or three big themes that apply. One is association. That is, a specific place's association with an historic individual or with an historic event or an organization. I think both of Scipio Jones High School in North Little Rock and Scipio Jones's house, not too many blocks away from here today, which is in disrepair, but I understand that work is being done to stabilize it, to memorialize the residence of this great lawyer, this great lion for justice. Another example of a place that is important because of association, First Missionary Baptist Church. Senator Chesterfield has told you about it. I've been in there. I helped consult when they were beginning the restoration of the King Bible. It is a holy place. It is a great place. It matters. Another category or another type of significance, commemoration. Places that are named for significant individuals or significant events. I think of Daisy Bates Boulevard. I think of the road named in North Little Rock for Curtis Sykes. Curtis Sykes, the great educator, one of the founders of the Black History Commission of Arkansas. When you turn a corner on those streets, you fulfill the function of saying the name of somebody of significance. And as I had reason to remember over the years and remind people, no man is dead so long as his name is spoken. Historic figures, as long as the name is spoken, there's a chance that someone's going to ask, who? And that gives us a chance to tell their story, to pass the significance along. A third category of significance for historic sites, historic structures, is that of being what we call witness buildings. Buildings that were there. One that strikes me as particularly significant is the grocery down on the corner in Elaine that was a witness to one of the great travesties of justice, one of the great episodes of inhumanity and hysteria in Arkansas history in 1919. That grocery store whose steps held people who witnessed inhumanity is being restored to be turned into a museum, a community center, a place to store and collect memories. That's a witness building. What endangers such significant places? Well, one, the process of erasure. That is the conscious attempt to get rid of traces of the past. A second, more pernicious force at work is simply erosion. As anybody knows who's worked on a stone or a brick structure, erosion, neglect, that takes its toll far more efficiently than any kind of intentional destruction. I was 19 years a historian of the Capitol building. I worked with contractors. I worked with stonemasons. Senator Chesterfield, I know how hard it is to get people who actually know how to deal with brick and stone. We have a saying, perpetual maintenance is the price of masonry. And trust me, it's not a small price. But if you want to keep that structure, if you want to keep that marker, that memorial, that reminder, you got to do the work. And you can do it all along, or you can try to play catch-up. Catch-up's more expensive, I can tell you that. A third danger is something that I call elision. That is the tendency of people to kind of get used to something not being there. Over time, you sort of get used to the fact that there's gaps in the landscape. Yeah, wasn't there a building there once? And you move on. Without the work of historians and community advocates, that could be the case here on 9th Street. Once a thriving commercial arterial, the heart of black businesses in Little Rock. Today, we have at one end the old Taborian Hall, Dreamland Ballroom, Arkansas Flag and Banner. At this end, we have the Mosaic Templars Cultural Center, not the original building, but a pretty good replica of one. We have these two reminders of this great empire of commerce, of activity, of culture. And what do we have in between? The alternator shop next door. A couple of other buildings scattered down the way, but nothing to suggest. The thing is, without working, building on these two poles, these two visual reminders, it's too easy to forget what was in a place like 9th Street. The process of elision. Eventually you get comfortable, you get used to seeing the gaps, and you stop wondering what was there. That's what we have to work against. That's what we have, and so we have to work with what history, what the forces of erasure and erosion leave us. Happily enough, there are survivals. Some intentionally preserved, some preserved by benign neglect, and some on the verge of falling away. A couple of weeks ago, I was over in Malvern for the dedication of a marker plaque commemorating the 1922 lynching of John Henry Harrison. It was a great day. Must have been 75, 80 people gathered as this plaque was unveiled, bringing forth memories. But there was a young man who came up to me. He's a college student at ASU Three Rivers, and he wanted to talk with me about the Malvern Rosenwald School. Malvern Rosenwald School, one of the larger Rosenwald schools, not quite as striking, not quite as sublime as Dunbar in our city, nevertheless a significant structure. Rosenwald School, it's been put on the most endangered list by the Historic Preservation Alliance. It's been documented. The problem is, nobody can figure out what to do with it. And there's the challenge for preserving significant places. Identifying an historic structure, an historic location is fine, but if all you do is put a plaque there and pickle it, it's not going to survive. Or at least not as well as if you can find a use for it. No one so far has figured out what to do with the Rosenwald School at Malvern, but there are people who are trying to figure out how to do that. give a purpose to the building, which then gives a drive, gives impetus to efforts to preserve it, to renovate it, to rehabilitate it, to repopulate it, and to keep those memories alive. This is the challenge of finding cultural significance in buildings and in spots, historic spots. The cultural significance shouldn't simply be limited to the past. You have to keep building layers of significance into the future in order to ensure that those stories will remain alive and vibrant, that names will be told, that stories will be told, and that people, a generation, 2 generations, 5 generations away from us, will care about these spaces. The presentations we hear today, they're markers on a path of building memories of that cultural significance for various sites. And hopefully, there'll be more stories to be told. Thank you very much for your patience. And on to Dr. Hargrove.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ware. Next, I am going to read, don't read it. I'm reading it. Read it, right? You have been out, yeah, we're reading it. Alrighty, our speaker today is recently retired professor from Philander Smith University, where he spent 26 of his 50 years as an administrator and faculty member. He is the past chair of the Black History Commission of Arkansas and has served 7 years. Previously, he served 11 years as inaugural chair of the Arkansas Commission on Closing the Achievement Gap. Combined, he has given 18 years of public service to both of these Arkansas commissions. Can we clap our hands for that first? Dr. Jesse J. Hargrove earned his Master's of Arts in Spanish and a PhD degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He received his bachelor's degree from Dillard University and HBCU. He is a distinguished educator, poet, linguistician, and neologist. Look at you. Y'all, I'm learning this with y'all. He is the author of 3 books, The Best Poetry in America, Closing the Achievement Gap in America, A National Imperative for a Superman, a Superwoman, and a Superintendent, and the recently published The Legacy of Celia Adams, From Slavery to Freedom, a work tracing his roots to the ex-slave Celia Adams, his great-grandmother. On the 106th birthday of Celia Adams, Dr. Hargrove was invited by the late Senators John McCain and Senator Paul Simon to testify before the Senate Rules and Administration Committee for bipartisan legislation for the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. In 2016, he led a civil rights bus to the dedication of the museum at the request of Mother Annie Abrams. In 2019, he assisted with editing Muhammad Ali, The Untold Story. Skin color cannot think nor reason. During his 26 years of employment at Philander Smith University, he has served as an associate professor of Spanish, interim vice president for academic affairs, associate vice president for academic affairs, associate dean of instruction, and assistant dean of instruction. And you don't want me to read this. Hargrove has also served as chair of the Division of Humanities, chair, Division of Education, interim dean of students, and AVP for enrollment management. He enjoys teaching, research, and service to higher education and community. In 2019, Hargrove was the exemplary teacher of the year, General Board of Higher Education and Ministry. Governor Asa Hutchinson appointed him 2018 through 2025 to the Black History Commission of Arkansas In 2004, Hargrove was appointed by Governor Mike Huckabee as inaugural chair of the Arkansas Commission on Closing the Achievement Gap. He was reappointed by Governor Mike Beebe, enabled him to serve 11 years until his recent appointment. Prior to coming to Arkansas, Hargrove taught in Broward County, Florida, public schools as a Spanish teacher for 6th and 8th grade through 8th grade, William Dandy Middle School, 1998 through 99. He was hired as a principal of a public charter school under Friends of Children, 1997 through 98. This charter school had the promise of being a model program in teacher training and curricular innovations. When the then soon-to-be elected Governor Jeb Bush visited the program in Florida, in St. Lauderdale, Florida. Our speaker has a passion for the history of African Americans and will share this with us, how an African American hospital in Arkansas, the McRae Sanatorium, made an impact on the culture of a community, a state, and a nation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hargrove to the podium.
Hello. How you doing? I want to thank my distinguished colleague for embarrassing me. And you think, Dr. Ware, you think that you had to be brief, but they told me to bring, I spoke so long last time, they told me that next time you come here and you're invited to speak, I want you to bring brevity to your comments. Well, I didn't bring brevity with me, but I did bring my sister and my niece. Would you please so welcome them? Let me express my thanks to the Black History Commission of Arkansas for sponsoring this important program that preserves the history, the heritage, and the culture of so many Arkansans in this state. You're talking about the cultural significance of building in the community, and I will try to stick with my script. Today is today a Saturday? That means a professor is used to teaching 90 minutes on a Saturday. Do I have 90 minutes or am I still at 50? She said 45. 45, okay. Yeah. The topic today, I'm aware that the Black History Commission focuses on various topics. My topic took an ethnographic approach. That is, I looked at the various hospitals in this community, and I focused on the McRae Center, the McRae Hospital. It was the first Negro hospital dedicated to tuberculosis in this state. They called it consumption back in the day. He suffered from consumption. She suffered from consumption. They were talking about tuberculosis. The McRae Sanatorium, there are cultural significance. There is a cultural significance. There are many of them to this hospital in this community. And I want to highlight the history makers who are part of this medical community. Indeed, doctors, nurses, and other medical providers had a reputation of being highly regarded and respected in this community and most communities throughout the United States of America. So I took a narrative history perspective to bring their lives to the forefront so that you can see what happened during this period of time. Black Arkansans needed doctors. Doctors made an important contribution to promoting the health and well-being of people who came out of the period of enslavement, needing medical help, medical assistance. And so this is an opportunity to bring those to the light. Yeah, the hospital. I want them to get a glimpse of this hospital that I'm referring to, located in Alexander. Black history is American history. And this presentation today recognizes some of the history makers in medicine. This is the hospital that many of you have passed by in the city of Alexander. And there's a reason why, and I'll share that with you. Dr. John Hope Franklin, who was a great mentor to me, used to always encourage me to share the unvarnished truth about our history, he said. The unvarnished truth does not pretty it up, but shares it as it was. That's Dr. John Hope Franklin, Black history in America. This is a story that shares how an African-American hospital in Arkansas, the McRae Sanatorium, made an impact and became a culturally significant entity in this state, in this community, and in this nation. Today, this audience is currently occupying a space and time in which nearly 100 years ago, the Mosaic Templars of America located their international headquarters in the very space in which you are seated. The Mosaic Templars of America. Thanks to the Cultural Center, the Mosaic Templars Cultural Center, they've made it into a museum. But this is where their international headquarters was located. It was a fraternity. This fraternal body was dedicated to ensure that its membership had insurance plans, health insurance, life insurance, burial insurance, coming out of this period of enslavement. The progress of African Americans in Arkansas, and particularly in this community, was rapid. Arkansas, particularly central Arkansas, was a pass-through point for many of blacks of the era trying to get out west, trying to get to the Midwest, trying to get up north. Yet, this hospital became known as the mother pearl of hospitals. Like Pearl Harbor, it was isolated from the main hub of the populated city of Little Rock. Yet it rose to become the first hospital in Arkansas and in the United States that was solely dedicated to the prevention and the treatment of tuberculosis. Also, it was able to find alternative medicine to prevented drugs for lung cancer. And it was leading, Arkansas was, in high death rates during these impactful years leading up to this hospital's opening in 1931. The McRae Sanatorium was barely a thought when the 26th governor of Arkansas, Thomas Chip McRae, that's why they referred to it as the McRae Sanatorium, Clark Chipman McRae began his $26,000 fight in 1923 to secure passage of legislation with cries of help. In 1919, coming from Miss Early Chambers, a white advocate from the Arkansas Tuberculosis Association, there were cries that she made to the legislature to build a facility that would be dedicated to combating the growing tuberculosis death rate among Americans, African Americans in Arkansas. This is a story that is seldom told, yet it is a story that everyone must know. This Governor McRae immediately made an appointment of an integrated board of 5, which was rare in the 1920s. Not only because there were 3 blacks appointed to this board and 2 whites, but due to the condition that existed after the 1896 Supreme Court case, Plessy versus Ferguson, that changed the behavior and the decorum under the colors of the United States of America. This, Plessy versus Ferguson, is a book chapter along with this one that I'm sharing with you today in this manuscript that I'm writing regarding the segregated railroads that Homer Plessy had to have his court case. Eventually, he lost that court case. And in 1896, it is now declared separate but equal. And now you're about the turn of the century, and hospitals are on the docket because of the poor health and the conditions of African Americans post-slavery, coming out of the period of enslavement. Today, the struggle for the majority of African Americans is to live in an inclusive society, one that recognizes fairness, one that recognizes equality, and indeed freedom for everyone to exist and belong in one society. However, when this researcher began to look at the degree of fairness that existed in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, he found that all was not fair, and certainly all was not equal, particularly as it relates to the health care of African Americans. So this researcher began to look through the lenses of the McRae Sanatorium, as John Hope had advised, looking through the lenses of the sanatorium to find answers that would uncover what it meant to have a separate facility for its Negro citizens in the early 1900s, particularly when society for both blacks and whites was experiencing the same health condition. They were experiencing tuberculosis at the white hospital, but they needed a Negro hospital as well. Medicine and health was the situation at the time. The old 1930 Negro hospital building is still standing in Alexander 95 years later. And it ceased its operation in 1967 and has been abandoned since 2011. However, during the pandemic of April 2020, there was an attempt to burn it down to the ground. This led to a desire to research more about this place called the McRae Sanatorium. It is located behind where my sister lives and where I live, the McRae Sanatorium. What this researcher found was stories about the human condition. This hospital is a part of an African American story of hospitals in America. They existed and they lived out their usefulness, but no one told their story of how they lived. These are stories about patients, stories about doctors, nurses, and other healthcare providers, stories that tell the medical history that existed in Arkansas and beyond. These are stories that should be told around the kitchen table and on playground and at popular events such as this. What was learned about the old Negro, old colored hospital shook me to the core. Why is this story so hidden from public view, so rarely told, so infrequently shared with the public? An old man who lived in the city of Alexander approached me about the McRae Center and the story. So I uncovered information about it through him. I went to research about Governor Thomas Chipman McRae. Why would he, a governor, be so interested in the health? Not only because he was friends with the advocate Early Chamber, who urged him to get the $26,000 in 1923 to establish this hospital for Negroes. He was born around Christmas time, 1851. And he died in 1929, 2 years before the McRae Center. The proposed McRae Center was to open in 1931. He died in 29. He was a Washington and Lee law school graduate, in 1874. He lived in Union County, Arkansas, during the unsettling Civil War years and its Reconstruction aftermath. He was well connected as an Arkansas legislator in 1876 on numerous committees I read. He was a congressman in 1884, proud to becoming the 26th governor in Arkansas in 1920. Monticello News carried a wonderful story on him in 2017. I read, and the McRae Sanatorium, a hospital for Negroes, was named in his honor when it opened its doors for its first patient on January 1, 1931. The hospital located in Alexander, the article went on to say. He acquired legislative funding in 1923. It now has approached 102 years, a centennial hospital that's building is still existing today, thanks to the legislative funding from Governor McRae. Senator Chesterfield, thank you so much for continuing your work for these important causes. Dr. George Ish, I want to introduce the name. Dr. George Ish, if you walk right outside the door as you pass through on this side, you'll see a picture of Dr. George Ish. He was part of the 1993 class of inductees, Hall of Fame. Dr. George Ish, an important name to know, ISH, indicated that there were only 3 medical doctors in the nation who could run this newly established hospital, and he was practicing in St. Louis, Missouri. Dr. Hugh A. Brown, I introduce you the name, a prominent medical doctor and a 1928 graduate from Howard University in Washington, D.C., had to be persuaded to give up his $1,500 a month salary and to come to rural Arkansas for $200 a month. $1,500, would you do it? To $200, would you take it? So he had some convincing to do. This monthly salary had to be thought about of $200 to become head of this newly established hospital for Negroes in 1931. 1928 graduate, practicing in Kansas City, located by Dr. Ish, to come to a southern state. Dr. Ish was successful in stating that, quote, this was an opportunity to do something special for your race, and such an opportunity may never come again. What do you think he did with those words from Dr. Ish? Dr. Hugh Brown worked tirelessly for 31 years, from 1931 until his death, 1962. The hospital patients were merged with other white hospital patients after his death, after Dr. King's death. The Alexander Human Development Center took over the property and operated for 43 years until it closed in 2011. Currently, 65 acres is still unoccupied. It sits in the city of Alexander. It was reportedly sold for $1 under controversial conditions. Check that out, Senator. During the initial months of 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, a fire was set on the 4th floor of the McRae Sanatorium in an attempt to burn it down. The last reminder. It was a remainder and a reminder of the Arkansas separate but equal past that existed and the impact that segregation had on many communities in the state of Arkansas. Who was Hugh A. Brown, and what were his successes and conditions to the medical profession? Let me share with you that Dr. Hugh Brown's, I had a chance to research fascinating information about him. As patients began to return to society, and he became the McRae Center superintendent, the medical director. Dr. Brown wrote in the Medical History Journal that the returning of patients to society and better diagnoses caused an increase in applications of patients. Until in 1935, we had a waiting list of over 160 admissions, but we only had 36 beds. During 1936 special legislative session, they call it a special legislative session to deal with this, the size of the McRae Sanatorium increased from 36 beds to the newly erected facility that now brought the hospital to 139 beds. The 1938 legislative session also provided for a home to house the nurses with the capacity to house 32 nurses. He has a 65 campus space. Dr. Hugh Brown indicated that during this period, he was able to do pneumothoracic research, phoenix operation, and theraplasty. Dr. Brown stated that with the return of patients to society, coupled with addition of 139 beds, a nurse's home, and in addition to, quote, the original building to provide a place where surgery could be done, better diagnosis, increased application. He's asking for money to do great work in this community. The McRae Sanatorium now had a main operating room, a doctor's dressing room, and a sterilizing room for modern surgery. You know, years ago, when you read those articles about Detroit Hospital, the Dunbar Hospital that was established in the early 1900s, and you read what was happening with the hospitals in northern states, in Missouri, the border states, and Washington, D.C., you find that they would not allow the doctors to do surgery. You had to have special permission from the hospital unless you establish your own hospital. In addition, it had a male dormitory, quarters for married staff, a fire station, because it was a campus, a home away from home, a home away from the city, and you'll find out in a second that the McRae Sanatorium for Negro patients was one of the major public health advances in Arkansas, according to Dr. Hugh Brown. He writes that the McRae facility is a sanatorium for Negroes who are victims of tuberculosis, and its steady growth is presently one of the largest and the most complete institutions of its kind in the United States. By the time Hugh Brown completed his 31 years at the McRae Sanatorium, the bed capacity moved, as I shared with you, from 26 beds in 1931 to 411 beds in 1962, the year of his retirement. During the 31 years of Dr. Brown's leadership at the hospital, he worked to advance the health care of patients, including offering courses in rehabilitation and a course in nurse training in 1940. By 1947, 2 surplus Army buildings were given to the hospital campus to be remodeled to house cosmetology, sewing, cooking, manual training, and auditorium, library, and social workers' offices, 2 classrooms, a barbershop, and rooms for homemaking. Dr. Brown stated that this program has been expanded by the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation with counselors, teachers, and a secretary, in addition to electrical appliances and a teacher in their adult education. Dr. Brown indicated that although the hospital admitted all types of tuberculosis of all ages, these tuberculars, a special inpatient clinic has been established to take care of diabetes, cardiac, and other complications. He wrote that in our therapy, the 5 major types of treatment are explored and applied. 5 types. He was very thorough because he wanted the future to know what was going on that they weren't talking about during this era, but you all are hearing the story that are coming back to life from these people who existed at these hospitals. He said, number one, these 5, they need rest and isolation to be isolated from the population. Secondly, adequate and appropriate food. He even had a garden and people, so he could get the collard greens. And the medicinal purposes for the collard greens, they had something called pot liquor. You don't know what that is today. My sister can tell you. Yes, I eat it every day. Proper ventilation. He wanted that for number 3. Drug therapy for number 4. And his last one, selected surgical procedure. Everybody around the nation wanted to know what Arkansas was doing. Arkansas was at the premier facie of existence during this era. Dr. Brown was most proud of his laboratory, which he stated is a modern in every respect. For an institution of this kind, it is equipped with a virology hood, incubator, sterilizer, and other equipment that is essential for the evaluation of treatment of the tuberculous sick. The major X-ray department handled these diagnostic procedures and tomography. And so I want to share with you a little about the historic hospital. I said it's on fire. My mind kept going back to the elder who lived in the city of Alexander, Arkansas. He approached me near the train station across the city hall and the post office, and he wanted to talk. We talked at the nearby gas station. He expressed to me how badly he felt about the numerous police shootings during the pandemic 2020. Then he expressed remorse about the Negro hospital being burned down. As we engaged in the conversation, he mentioned that, quote, this old hospital was the only place that the colored people around here could go. He was white. He said, I know what they were trying to get from that building. They wanted to burn it down because they were trying to get the brick. I said, the brick? Do you know that the bricks from that colored hospital are so valuable that everyone could make money and become a millionaire? These bricks, he said, were imported from out east, someplace like Pennsylvania, he said, and brought by train to the Alexander Depot. Alexander, he said, was the old colored town. It had a train depot station that let the colored people out. And that was one of the reasons they built that hospital. That was a major population center, he said, for colored. My research shifted to the reasons why African Americans could not live in the Little Rock community. Why did they cluster themselves in certain migration towns that would eventually lead to poor health conditions? These were conditions that would affect their lungs and respiratory system. Conditions for tuberculosis began to affect many of those who followed the migration patterns of Central Arkansas. However, migrations patterns continued to Central Arkansas. Can anyone tell me? I'm used to being a professor. I got to stop that. How many migrations towns were there? Give me a number. Around Central Arkansas. Oh, you burning up. Higher, a little higher. Yeah, a little higher. You said, did somebody say 12? You're right. 12 migration. The Great Migration within, it could be traced to more than a dozen communities that have mining ties. The mining ties, did you hear that? The Great Migration within the United States occurred between 1920 and through the 1970s. Migration often looked at the decline of people from the South to the North, Midwest, and to the West. The exodus of people from rural communities and towns is associated with low-paying jobs or a declining workforce, which necessitates their settlement. However, for blacks in central Arkansas, the population increase during the census time frame from the 1920s to 50s shows a different image of a people who came but were impacted by healthcare conditions from mining. Anybody heard of Reynolds Aluminum? Alcoa? You exit off on Alcoa? You're talking about built in the communities. One informant shared that it was a dusty mining industry. Central Arkansas communities. Say, if you heard of these. Alexander, Bauxite, Benton, Bryant. Ever heard of a city called College Station? Granite Mountain. What about Hard Scramble? Higgins Switch, Malvern, St. Josephine Pankey Community Estate, Sweet Home, and Wrightsville. These were cities in which blacks often migrated to and relocated, and all were on the outskirts of Little Rock for a purpose. And their hospital was located on the outskirts of Little Rock for a purpose. You came into Little Rock for business. And so when they began to move from after the Civil Rights, 1964, conditions began to ease up and times began to change. Blacks often migrated or relocated with families to find jobs in the burgeoning enclave, obtaining housing, as well as for protection from the racial horrors of Jim Crow, Arkansas. They grouped themselves together for protection in those 12 mining town areas that surrounded Little Rock community. When I interviewed the descendants of the migrants, they pointed out to me that people that they knew in the 12 areas, and it was quite fascinating to talk. They said they were looking for the bauxite rocks with extractable aluminum, and they were firing up these pits. However, these were horrible working conditions in unhealthy pits, in granite holes, in Reynolds mining aluminum, in 3M breathing rock dust, and often in the Alcoa blue waters sinkholes. Separate but equal in Jim Crow laws forced blacks to live away from populated towns and cities in Arkansas, such as Little Rock. Discrimination in housing and unhealthy working conditions in underground mines caused blacks to have health conditions such as consumption, or what you call tuberculosis, and other respiratory diseases. The unhealthy conditions that blacks confronted were so grave that black community leaders such as Dr. William Stanley Ish and his wife, Ursel Ish, met with Miss Earlene Chambers, who was executive director of the Arkansas Tuberculosis Association, found themselves meeting with Arkansas politicians to establish a hospital. And so this hidden hospital, Dr. Ish was a prominent Little Rock. I want to tell you a little something about it, because I told you his picture is out front. But he graduated from Harvard Medical School, in 1909, was appointed by Governor McRae to serve as one of the 5 board members to oversee the yet-to-be-constructed hospital. As a result of the work of Dr. Ish and found in the growing numbers of hospitals in Arkansas, United Friends Hospital and the J.E. Bush Memorial Hospital, anybody heard of that? As well as his being at the forefront pioneering new medicine and new pulmonary treatments, tuberculosis. The board of the Mosaic Templars Cultural Center named him in '93, as I told you, as honoree. And so his ability to navigate between the black race and the white race during this era made him, and the fact that he was born in Little Rock made him special. And so that's him. Dr. Ish founded United Friends Hospital located at 714 West 10th Street. And John Edwards Bush, I'm going to rush through this one, was urged by Dr. R.A. Williams of Provident Hospital. Does anyone know Provident Hospital in Chicago? You've heard of that. You just don't remember it. Who was the first black successful heart surgeon? Daniel what? Hale Williams. And so that is what happened there. But right out front, J.E. Bush Memorial Hospital in 1918 until its closure in 1927 due to the John Carter race lynching that happened right outside of these doors. You all know about that one, so I won't go through there. But let me end by saying that Dr. Hayward Hill, who is still alive, 90 years old, worked at this facility and shared the wonderful pictures, which I'll put in the book, if you will want to see those. And here we are today, concluding this healing and revealing story of the McRae Center, looking for friends of the McRae Sanatorium, community champions who are ready to preserve the history of this hospital that was to treat and to prevent the conditions that caused the spread of tuberculosis. It's a cause that many of you would want to be involved in because you want to carry on the tradition of volunteering to be friends of the sanatorium, as Miss Early Chambers did with the Arkansas Tuberculosis Association. So as I end this message in a civil rights style, I want you to pause and think, if only for a little while, that the purpose of life is to serve humanity. And if we all come together, we can all be free. Think about life and the great possibility within, for it is love of our world's children that makes us all kin. Every day, share a kind word or even a song, and then you'll be able to say, as that class of 2000, that I want to be the best that I can be because I want to see the best come out of me. I want to know all there is to know because I want to go where the green grass grows. Thank you, and I love you all. Question, they may have some questions. Can you show them? Let's see if it'll show. Oh, Mosaic. You walked through the doors today, and you got a chance to see. This is the Mosaic Templars of America, this international fraternity that was right here in this building in which you sit. Well, not this building, but the space in which you sit. Yes. And this is another angle of our wonderful edifice that you are part building. These buildings have wonderful stories to tell. How many of you have already seen some of the displays downstairs, the exhibits within this wonderful edifice? Please do while you're here. This is another angle. This is where the lynching of John Carter took place in this intersection. This is the building you're in. This is where, and that made Dr. Fred Thomas Jones, who was the black doctor who founded Booker T. Washington, as you said, came to this town, and he dedicated this building this predecessor to this building right here in 1913. Booker T. Washington came to Little Rock. And that church that she mentioned, that the senator mentioned, he was right there at First Missionary. And Dr. King was also there. A lot of history. I don't know why this history is missing, but Arkansas. The ballroom. Did I have a picture of that? There it is, Taborian Hall. Where's Taborian Hall? Right down the street. You're on 9th. This is famous 6th Street, Steve. This is famous 9th Street, where all of the activity took place. And Taborian Hall, another group, fraternal group, they offered insurance. These groups offered insurance. So, and the membership in it, and that's how they got involved. In here was, blacks went to Jacksonville military, the Army bases, and so they would have a space in here when they were stationed in the military. Also in here was the ballroom. The ballroom was in, same Dreamland Ballroom. You heard of it? The Dreamland Ballroom. Why do you think there's a Dreamland Ballroom that burned down in 1921? What's the relationship between Little Rock and Tulsa, Oklahoma? Come on, talk to me. Class. Black Wall Street started in Arkansas. They ran O.W. Gurley out of Arkansas. And what city did he go to? Tulsa, Oklahoma, Arkansas. When they got there, they met the Williams family. The Williams family were rich, black family, because the oil boom was in Tulsa.
We have a question over here.
Very good.
I would just like to say that I can appreciate the McRae Sanatorium because my father had tuberculosis about 1955 and stayed in that facility. So I am delighted to know all the information today regarding that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
When you speak of the sanatorium, that is, history reaches out so many ways. It grabs us in so many ways. I am Randy Hendricks. I was adopted in 1964. My parents tried to adopt in 1959 or 1960, but my grandfather had tuberculosis, and back then they wouldn't let a child come in the house if there was sickness, and guess where the hospital was that he went to? The one that you're discussing.
Yeah.
So that struck me when you came up with that, and yeah, great story. History touches us all.
Dr. Hargrove, back again. You mentioned some names of doctors' names during that period of time, but did the name of Dr. Buford Gaines come up during any of those studies?
Where was he at?
He was here in Little Rock. He was a full-time medical doctor for almost 40 years, but he also gave up his being a doctor to become a full-time minister. He was the minister at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. And he was during that time from 1900 to 1946 was when 1900, yeah. Well, we're gonna talk about it again. The other one I wanted to touch on was, you was also mentioning some names, John Bush. His family lived on 15th and Ringo. I grew up on 14th and Ringo. I knew the Dentons and all of those folks also. The thing is that, did you know the Dunbar Community Center, the way it sits now, was where the old homestead of the Bush family, and when that home burned down, that's where they donated that property to the city, and that's where they built Dunbar Community Center. Were you aware of that one? Right there. Yeah, correct. But I'm just saying, that's where the old Bush home was, and they donated that land to, that's where Dunbar Community Center is. Yeah. So that's another little piece of that history where we're talking about these buildings.
Thank you, Dr. Hargrove. We appreciate this head full of information that we're going to have to soak in for a couple of days. A book coming soon by Dr. Hargrove. Let's give him a round of applause.
This person here is an amazing person. I mean, she knew that this was a lot of research, but she gave me this topic like it was nothing. And it's still a lot more research that needs to be done, because when you bring about that, can anyone tell me, oh, here I go again. A Baseline Street is named Baseline because it was the baseline for the Louisiana Purchase.
Oh, wow. See, I told you, a book coming soon near you, Dr. Hargrove.